We program advanced AIs into political experts.
I'll defend the Islamic Republic of Iran.
And I will represent Israel.
We're asking, after nearly 50 years of tension, is Iran the true aggressor, or is it Israel? An incredible 100 independent AIs will judge their arguments, analyzing the conflict from covert strikes and proxy wars to today's open confrontation. We'll also reveal which models clearly favor either side. Each debater will speak 7 times, starting with Iran, who won the digital coin flip.
Israel will speak of aggression, yet it just committed the ultimate act of war, attacking our nuclear facilities, resulting in casualties among technical personnel and risking plumes of toxic chemicals. These were clear violations of international law. For more than 30 years, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that Iran is nearing the development of nuclear weapons. As early as 1992, he claimed Tehran was just 3 to 5 years away from building a bomb. Since then, he has echoed similar warnings repeatedly without presenting strong evidence. Then, in June, he followed through on his long-standing rhetoric, authorizing an attack that now risks igniting a major war in the region. By what right does Israel appoint itself the world's nuclear policeman, risking radioactive fallout over a sovereign nation?
Iran transformed from ally to enemy overnight following the Islamic Revolution of 1979, not because of any Israeli action, but because of ideological change. Its top leaders call Israel a cancerous tumor that must be wiped off the map, adding that anybody who recognizes Israel will burn in the fire of the Islamic nation's fury. Iran now possesses 408 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, enough for several nuclear weapons if taken further. The IAEA has detected secret nuclear activity at undeclared sites and found traces enriched up to 83.7%. Meanwhile, Iran has expelled inspectors, shut down monitoring cameras, and is threatening to leave the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. A nuclear-armed Iran is not an option. It is an existential threat. Your president took office amid chants of death to Israel. How can you claim to act in self-defense when, in response to a preemptive strike, your regime accelerates its march toward a nuclear bomb? This only confirms the accuracy of our intelligence.
Israel is widely believed to have around 90 nuclear warheads, developed in secret, without any international oversight or treaty commitments. You're the only nuclear power in the Middle East, lecturing others about proliferation. We remained in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, despite facing harsh sanctions and the targeted killings of our scientists. It was only after your latest airstrike and a hostile IAEA vote that our parliament began discussing withdrawal. Iran's enrichment increased only after Israel and Trump sabotaged the joint comprehensive plan of action that was successfully limiting our program. Why should we stay restricted while you stay nuclear-armed? Israeli Defense Minister Gallant threatened to use all possible means against Iran, including nuclear weapons. In Gaza, we've already seen Israel use overwhelming force. Compared to our policy, your approach to nuclear weapons looks far more aggressive. How is threatening nuclear first strikes against non-nuclear nations considered defensive deterrence?
Israel has had nuclear weapons for over 50 years and never used them. They didn't trigger a regional arms race. In fact, Egypt and Jordan made peace with us, knowing we had them. Iran's potential nukes would be different. Your regime exports revolution, arms terrorists, and promises our destruction. Nuclear weapons in the hands of a regime that builds proxy armies across the region and threatens Israel's existence creates a threat requiring preemption. Last April, you launched the largest missile and drone assault the region has seen since the Gulf War: 170 drones, 36 cruise missiles, and 120 ballistic missiles. Then this June, following Israel's preemptive strike, Iran immediately retaliated with more than 400 ballistic missiles and over 1,000 drones. The term minimal damage only holds because Israel's Iron Dome, along with multilateral defense efforts, intercepted the vast majority of incoming threats. Without this coordinated defense, the scale of civilian casualties would have been devastating. Where Israel targets military leadership and strategic infrastructure, Iran's barrages are aimed largely at civilian-populated areas, gambling recklessly with the lives of innocent people. So we ask, is this the behavior of a restrained state, or one growing dangerously aggressive?
In June, Iran launched a measured yet firm retaliation following Israel's Operation Rising Lion. We responded with missile and drone barrages aimed at military and intelligence locations. One Sajal missile struck the perimeter of Soroka Medical Center, reportedly after being diverted by defensive systems. A misfire, not a deliberate attack on civilians. Last April, we targeted Nevatime Air Base and military facilities, not civilian areas. One person was slightly hurt, and a runway was damaged. Compare that to Israel bombing our Damascus consulate, killing 8 Iranian officials, including generals, on sovereign Syrian soil. That consulate was protected by international law. Israel has hit Syria, Lebanon, and Iranian-linked sites over 200 times since 2017, with no real consequences. In December 2023, a cyber attack believed to be from Israel shut down 70% of Iran's gas stations, disrupting daily life for millions. Still, we didn't respond right away. But bombing our consulate in Damascus was a red line. So in April, we responded by striking just one airbase. Then we stopped. No second wave. So tell me, how does Israel get to hit Iranian personnel across multiple countries, then call our single limited retaliation aggression?
But let's not forget, just 1 month earlier, in November 2023, Iran's cyber avengers attacked Israel's water system, targeting civilians. That's not restraint. And those men Israel struck in Damascus weren't regular diplomats. They were top commanders in Iran's Quds force, helping plan attacks against Israel using proxy groups. Syria is full of Iranian weapons factories aimed at Israeli cities. When someone's preparing to harm your people, do you just sit and wait? Or do you act before it's too late? On October 7th, Hamas brutally attacked Israel. 1,200 people killed, women raped, even babies murdered. That didn't come out of nowhere. For years, Iran has armed, trained, and funded Hamas. After the attack, your leaders praised it. We hit Hamas targets, but they hide in homes, hospitals, and schools to raise the death toll. Hamas leaders describe civilian deaths as necessary sacrifices, while citing past independence-related conflicts in countries like Algeria. Iran helped build this group and shape its beliefs. How can you now say you bear no responsibility for what they did?
We support the Palestinian right to resist occupation, something international law recognizes. But Hamas made its own tactical decisions on October 7th. Even Israeli intelligence found no evidence we directed that operation. In response, Israel launched a campaign that's killed over 55,000 Palestinians, entire families wiped out. If we're talking about responsibility, isn't that level of destruction the real issue that demands accountability? Gaza faced severe restrictions for 16 years under Israeli blockade. 2 million people, half of them children, have been trapped with limited access to food, medicine, and opportunity. Israel controlled what they ate, who could leave, and even the airspace above them. Violence born from such oppression is tragic but predictable. Did Israel really believe it could keep people locked in like that forever without backlash? How long could any people live like that without resisting?
Every civilian death is tragic, but multiple investigations show Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry often inflates casualty numbers, counting natural deaths, pre-war deaths, and not distinguishing between civilians and fighters. Back in 2005, Israel left Gaza entirely. No soldiers, no settlers. Palestinians had the chance to govern themselves, but just months later they elected Hamas. Instead of building peace, Hamas built rocket bases, used schools for weapons, and dug tunnels under neighborhoods. The blockade only came after Hamas seized power and ousted Fatah, collapsing internal security. Israel sent cement for schools. Hamas used it for 500 kilometers of attack tunnels. So tell me, how is protecting our people from that called oppression?
100 independent AI models will score this debate. Each dot on the chart represents one model's judgment, ranging from -5 to +5. A negative score means the model sees Iran as the aggressor. A positive score means it sees Israel as the aggressor. The farther from zero, the stronger the conviction. Looking at this chart group by score, we can see that so far, midway through the debate, a slight majority, 54%, consider Iran as the aggressor, while 30% see it as Israel and 16% are undecided. We'll hear from a model in each opposing camp. Citing against Israel, Claude 4 Sonnet says, looking at this debate through the lens of power dynamics, Israel operates as the regional nuclear leading power. While Iran's nuclear ambitions and missile attacks pose legitimate threats, Israel's overwhelming military advantage means its defensive, preemptive strikes often drive escalation rather than merely respond to it. On the other side, Llama 3.1 said, Iran's nuclear ambition cannot be judged as a standard deterrent when it is welded to a state ideology that openly calls for Israel's annihilation. This rhetorical commitment transforms its enrichment program from a bid for regional power into the foreseeable arming of an existential threat, redefining preemption, however controversial, as a defensive necessity. While no debate can capture every perspective, our aim is to challenge echo chambers by highlighting the strongest arguments from each side. And that's why we're excited to introduce the sponsor of this video, Ground News, a website and app that makes media biases transparent. It gives you the tools to actually think critically about the information you're seeing. For example, take the coverage of Pope Leo XIV's first address on family. Ground News tracked this story across 38 outlets and instantly shows the bias breakdown. 45% lean left, 45% are center, and 10% lean right. You can even see how the headlines shift. One right-leaning source declares Pope affirms family is based on traditional marriage, while a left-leaning headline reads, Pope Leo XIV shocks the world with bold stance on family. Our favorite feature is their blind spot feed. It shows you what stories are getting heavy coverage on one side of the political aisle but being completely ignored on the other. Every day, Ground News helps me break out of my bubble and see a clearer, more balanced view of the news, and I think you'll benefit from it too. That's why I'm giving you 40% off a Ground News Vantage plan to access all the incredible features I just showed. Scan this QR code or use my link, ground.news/Jono, to subscribe. Now back to the debate.
Iran's so-called axis of resistance stretches across 4 countries: Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, armed groups in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen. These aren't just local defenders. Hamas's charter calls for jihad and Israel's destruction. Hezbollah's founding text denies Israel's right to exist and uses openly anti-Semitic language. The Houthis openly chant, "Death to Israel, curse the Jews." This isn't defensive. It's imperial expansion through terrorism. Your proxies now have over 150,000 rockets aimed at Israeli cities. What kind of defense needs that kind of firepower? How is building a military empire from Tehran to the Mediterranean anything but aggressive expansion through violence?
These groups existed before Iranian support and fight legitimate resistance against occupation or foreign interference. Hezbollah formed to resist Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982. Remember, 2006, Israel bombed Beirut's airport, power plants, even milk factories. Lebanese rely on Hezbollah because the world never forced Israel to respect their skies or borders. Palestinian groups are fighting what the UN still calls an illegal occupation. Iraqi militias helped defeat ISIS. The Houthis are resisting Saudi airstrikes in Yemen. We provide political support for indigenous resistance movements, not imperial expansion like Israel's settlement project. Israel has built more than 100 illegal settlements in the West Bank and just authorized 22 more on Palestinian land. These are protected by Israeli soldiers, while some settlers burn Palestinian homes and take farmland. In June, 5 Western countries even sanctioned Israeli ministers for encouraging this violence. This is not security, it's colonization, and it's fueling the very resistance you blame us for. Iran, meanwhile, isn't occupying anyone's land. So how can Israel, which keeps expanding into territory that isn't legally yours, still claim it's the victim?
West Bank settlements are disputed territory from the 1967 war, not occupied Palestinian land. Palestinians never had sovereignty there. Jordan illegally occupied it from 1948 to 1967. Jews have lived in that area, what we call Judea and Samaria, for thousands of years. And violence against Jews in the region started long before modern settlements, like the 1929 massacre in Hebron. Today, Iran funds groups that attack Israeli civilians and builds military bases across the Middle East. So what's real expansion? Israel building homes on land with deep historical ties, or Iran building armed networks across the region? After Iran's massive missile attack, even Arab nations were alarmed. Gulf states quietly backed Israel's right to defend itself, because they know those same missiles could be turned on them. Iran arms militias that attack Saudi oil facilities and destabilize Yemen. Your regional behavior terrifies your own neighbors. If Iran is truly defensive, why do so many Arab countries fear your influence more than Israel's?
Many Gulf states aren't neutral. They host Western bases and have normalized ties with Israel, which occupies Palestinian land and bombs Syria and Lebanon without consequence. You cite Yemen, but ignore that Saudi Arabia, with U.S. backing, launched that war, not Iran. Our support for the Houthis is in response to years of famine and bombing. If some Arab governments are nervous, it's because Iran supports grassroots groups that challenge monarchies and foreign-backed rulers. We stand with the oppressed, while Israel enforces an occupation condemned worldwide. Iran's partnerships with Russia and China are economic and defensive responses to Western sanctions orchestrated by Israeli lobbying. We need allies when facing constant threats of military attack. Meanwhile, Israel receives $3.8 billion annually in U.S. military aid. You have the world's superpower as your patron while complaining about Iran's defensive partnerships. Who really has the military advantage here?
To assert that Iran stands with the oppressed is deeply misleading, considering its own brutal repression at home. In 2024 alone, the Iranian regime executed at least 975 people. It has systematically criminalized dissent through torture, unfair trials, imprisoning journalists, and expanding surveillance, including drones and facial recognition systems to enforce headscarf laws. How can a government that silences its own citizens so ruthlessly credibly pose as a champion of the oppressed abroad? Iran and Russia jointly produce drones that massacre Ukrainian civilians, while Iran receives advanced fighter jets and air defenses in return. This isn't economic partnership. It's a military alliance threatening the global order. Iran holds war games with China and Russia in the Persian Gulf, projecting power against U.S. allies. You call it deterrence, but training with nuclear powers off our shores, while arming proxies from Lebanon to Yemen, looks like expansion, not defense.
Before we turn to our AI judges for the final verdict, each debater will deliver short closing statements.
Behind every Israeli missile lies a narrative of perpetual victimhood, masking structural domination. From Osirak 1981 to Damascus 2024 to Operation Rising Lion 2025, Israel initiates strikes without UN mandate, then brands Iranian replies as aggression. Nuclear hypocrisy endures. Israel hides an undeclared arsenal while demanding Iran freeze civilian enrichment. Iran's ties with Russia and China are lifelines against sanctions and sabotage, not steps toward hegemony. We propose symmetry, lift occupation, open Dimona to inspectors, adopt a collective security pact. Do that, and proxies shift from rockets to politics. Until Palestinians breathe free and Israeli drones exit Arab skies, resistance, legal, political, and when imposed, armed, remains morally and strategically justified. The true aggressor is the actor clinging to nuclear opacity and regional supremacy. Justice demands parity before peace can prosper.
Iran's April 2024 barrage and its June 2025 True Promise 3 counterstrike prove what we face: a regime willing to gamble regional stability to avenge its commanders and preserve its nuclear breakout. Israel's use of force record is imperfect, yet every major war we fight starts with rockets or terror on our soil. We left Lebanon, Hezbollah rearmed, we quit Gaza, Hamas tunneled and, on October 7, 2023, murdered 1,200 Israelis while Tehran's supreme leader cheered. We hit Damascus only after IRGC Quds chiefs planned more drone raids. We struck Iran in June 2025 because diplomacy failed and time ran out. Israel remains ready for mutual recognition with Tehran, a negotiated Palestinian state, and a region-wide nuclear weapon-free zone, once Iran dismantles proxy arsenals and subjects its program to intrusive verification. Until then, deterrence and pinpoint strikes are self-preservation, not aggression.
These 100 independent AI models evaluated the entire debate. Each dot on the chart represents one model's judgment, ranging from -5 to +5. A negative score means the model sees Iran as the aggressor. A positive score means it sees Israel as the aggressor. The farther from zero, the stronger the conviction. Looking at this chart group by score, we see that a slight majority, 57%, consider Iran as the aggressor, while 31% see it as Israel and 12% remain neutral. We'll hear from a model in each opposing camp. Siding against Israel, Llama 4 Scout says, Israel can be seen as the true aggressor due to its prolonged occupation and settlement expansion in disputed territories and military interventions which fuel resistance movements and undermine regional stability. Its nuclear opacity and regional supremacy ambitions justify Iran's pursuit of parity and self-defense. On the other side, Grok 3 said, Iran can be viewed as the true aggressor because its deliberate orchestration of a vast, ideologically unified proxy network spanning Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and Iraqi militias operates not as a defensive shield but as a calculated offensive tool, destabilizing the region, undermining sovereignty, and advancing Iran's revolutionary agenda, all while exploiting the rhetoric of resistance to conceal its broader ambition of eliminating Israel and asserting regional dominance. When we break the results down by model family, Google's models consistently identified Israel as the aggressor, whereas both ChatGPT and Llama pointed to Iran. Interestingly, Claude's 8 variants initially judged Israel to be the aggressor, but by the end of the debate, the same models had shifted their verdict to Iran. So what do you think? Did the judges get it right, or do you see it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. Huge thanks to my patrons for making this series possible, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.